It's easy to forget that you hold such a place in a neighbourhood like East Brunswick because you get caught up in running the business and keeping things going. And, I remember when we emerged from the long lockdown, which I think was the second one, and I saw the amount of bookings come in, I just burst into tears because it was just so moving to think that, oh my God, we've just opened and that's it. The bookings have just come flooded in.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are going to have a little bit of a celebration, a bit of a reminisce, a bit of a look back and a look forward. Our guest today is Joseph Abboud from Rumi Restaurant in Brunswick, and Rumi is celebrating a very special anniversary this week. Joseph, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks for having me, Dani.
Tell us what birthday you're celebrating.
15.
That is pretty great. I remember when Rumi opened. I can't believe it was 15 years ago. I can't believe that Carlton hasn't won a premiership in the intervening years. But that is an amazing milestone. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a lot of sort of shows our age a bit, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, it just shows what a great thing it is that you created there for the community and for your family in Brunswick. Tell us what it means to you.
Which it's a hard question. It's so much has happened in the 15 years. So, I wasn't married and I didn't have any kids when we opened it. And, Nat, who's my wife now, was just my girlfriend. And things kept on going from there. And now we have 3 sons who only know that Rumi is in their life.
Yeah, that's pretty special. So for people who don't know the restaurant, tell us a little bit about it.
So it's, always been hard to label. Do you call it new Middle Eastern food or contemporary Middle Eastern food? But, we opened with the idea that we would serve Middle Eastern food in a slightly more contemporary setting and just with a little bit of a fresher take on some things. Not everything needed to be have a twist on it and be somehow modernised, but just a real sort of a fresh approach to what we were doing. I felt that there was a fair bit of sort of tired Middle Eastern food around. It had been often sort of a takeaway food or a cheap food, and we just tried to give it that little bit more respect.
So, I mean, there are dishes that you're doing now that you've done right from the start, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
So what are some of the real Rumi classics?
The purest and the one that goes straight to the heart straight away is the labneh. So it's a very simple thing, strained yogurt, and it's very commonly available. But we make our own yogurt every day, so we do about 20 litres of yogurt every day. It's still one of the most satisfying things that you start with milk, and by the end of the day you pop the lid on it and you smell this beautiful sweet yogurt that has a beautiful tartness to it, and over time it takes on I suppose the yeasts of the environment, and it becomes something unique to Rumi in this case. And so that's a dish that, or it's a dip that goes on the menu, and it's just such, there's no cucumber in it, there's no mint in it, it's just beautiful homemade yogurt hung for a couple of days on a plate with some fresh Australian olive oil and served with flatbread. And that's just, to me, that's the best way to start. The first time I ate at Rumi myself, it was the first thing I put in my mouth, and I still remember that day. Our Persian meatballs have been on since day one. They're a recipe that's made with rice rather than a sort of breadcrumb or an almond meal or anything like that. So they're really soft and tender. And my middle son, I reckon, can eat about 8 of them. He's already flagged that his next birthday at Rumi, which is the standard. All the kids come to Rumi for their birthday, so he wants 2 plates of meatballs and 2 plates of potatoes. So, and fried cauliflower has been on since the start, which we fry it quite dark. People still return it occasionally, saying this is burnt, but when you fry it dark like that, you really get that beautiful bittersweet vegetable flavour, and then the creamy inside, and that's been on since the start. They're three sort of main dishes that have seen their time through. And each sort of year you get a new dish that if you took off, you probably have a riot out the front.
Well, I love to hear that your regulars are so invested in the restaurant. It certainly is that kind of place. I mean, that the owners go there for their birthday celebrations really says something about it. It's just a place that people just always want to go back to. So, Joseph, I love hearing you talk about the food and just this real prominence that you give to single ingredients, the yogurt, the cauliflower. But, you trained in, really serious fine dining restaurants and worked in, some restaurants that had different projects. Tell us a bit about your background and then how you sort of were able to let that go to do something like Rumi.
Right. So I should be on a couch for this, shouldn't I? Lying back, having my monthly session.
Definitely. I think our production notes should say, now lie back.
Yeah. The sort of fork in the road for me was working at a restaurant called Est, which was run by Donovan Cook and Philippa Sibley. This was 1998, 99, I think it was, around then. I had no idea what fine dining restaurants were all about. I'd been to Jacques Raymond, and it was the first time I'd ever eaten in a fine dining restaurant, and it really blew my mind. And I tried to get a job there and I couldn't. And then somebody said, go and check out this place. And so I knocked on the door and Donovan answered, and anyone who knows Donovan, he's not a man of too many words, and he just said, what do you want? And I said, I want to work here. And he said, there's no jobs, come back in a few months. So I came back in a few months, and he sort of said, really, there's nothing, but come in and do a day if you want and see what it's like. And it was the most intense and frightening experience I've ever had in my life. I think it was so full on and foreign to me that, the next time I went back for a second trial, played some really loud music in the car before I got out and really tried to psych myself up. And as soon as I got in the door, I was pretty much floored in about a minute when somebody asked me to do something that I had no idea what to do.
I mean, what are you talking about? Like, what happened? What was going on in there?
It was, the intensity was something that, so the music was always played at, so loud that you really couldn't hear each other speak or think. And just the standard that everybody worked at was something I'd never experienced before. Before or since that time, it's the only place I've worked at where it was, you're at Est now. The reason you're doing this properly is because you're at Est. And there was never that'll be okay, and I've worked in some other good places, but never had that. It's okay. It'll be okay to send, so the standard was so high that it just blew my mind, and it was so taxing. It was about 15 hours a day, and it was just that whole experience was so intense, and really the fork in the road, and changed everything that I've done since.
So, I mean, what do you take from an experience like that, where it was just cooking at such a high level, that real striving for perfection? What do you take from there what did you take forward?
An ability to work under extreme pressure and very fast. That was the probably the biggest thing, and just that standard, knowing. So to this day, I know when something is not at the best standard, and you just try and push towards that, and there's been different times in my life and through the life of Rumi where that standard has been up or down, or life has had different priorities or various things, but knowing the difference is definitely puts you on the path, I think, to maintaining a standard. I suppose that's contributed to Rumi being around 15 years, because despite some low points or some points where I haven't been very happy with it, because you know the difference, you come back up and you tighten things up again and you get it back on track.
So, Joseph, you've shepherded your flagship restaurant through the pandemic, such as it's been so far, but you've also said goodbye to a much-loved restaurant recently, and that was Bar Saracen, one of my absolute favourite places of all time in the city. Tell us about that.
That's a hard one. That it sort of struggled from day one, really. It just never quite got the runs on the board that it needed to sustain itself financially. And things started to sort of change a little bit at the start of 2019? Is that when the pandemic came? Yeah, 2020. Oh, yeah, 2020. So, and then we got hit with the pandemic, and every time you refreshed your page, bookings disappeared, and we sort of hobbled through doing some takeaway and various things online, and then we reopened, and then we got closed again. And when I came back after that, I remember we were trying to reopen. We'd just employed a new front of house manager, Georgia, who has a really beautiful way with wine, really, really impressive taste in wine. I think we were really looking forward to that, and we thought it was another piece of the puzzle that came together to sort of keep Saracen going forward. And I remember that I was listening to maybe even your podcast and cleaning the restaurant rather than engaging with her and motivating her for what we needed to keep going. And at that point, I knew something was wrong and that I'd just been too burnt by what had happened, and it was too much. And basically I tried my best to do what I could to change my mindset, and I just couldn't. And it felt like some sort of, I don't know, I described it as a business depression. It was like, I'm assuming it's something that's burnout, how people describe being burnt out, but I just didn't have what it took to lead the team. And that's probably something that I felt during the pandemic, that I don't think that I was the best leader I could have been. I just didn't have it in me. It was too stressful and too gut-wrenching, and I was a little bit too exposed. I was involved still with Maud's Head in Thornbury, which I've since sold my share to a long-term staff member, which is a good ending on that one. But just to be exposed on all those different areas and knowing that Saracen just hadn't made money since it opened, it was just too much.
Oh, it's so sad. I can just really feel the weight of that.
Yeah, I can too now. Yeah, so that's, and then I'm sure anyone listening that has made the decision to close a restaurant, it's really intense. It's a really horrible feeling, especially once you sort of weigh up what you do. In fact, I'm here right now by chance cleaning up because we're trying to break our lease and negotiate with the landlord as to how we can do that.
Oh, what does that feel like to be in the space, Joseph?
It's been a while now, but it very, very mixed emotions. I'm sadly glad that I don't have to. I said to someone the other day, I'm so glad that I'm not negotiating 2 restaurants now during another lockdown. It's one thing to have shut Rumi and reopened and what have you, and we sort of do that fairly easily with takeaway, and being in the suburbs is a little bit easier. But I'm sort of glad I didn't have to wind down another Saracen again for another lockdown.
So I just find that really interesting that you could sort of have this compartmentalized depression where you don't have the energy to get Saracen through, but Rumi was sort of ticking along. I mean, is it as simple as one's in the suburbs and the takeaway worked better? I suppose it was more established. I mean, what is that? Is it just like you've got to put your energy somewhere and you can't spread it? Like, how do you sort of look at it?
Well, that was it. Basically, it was a scenario where one restaurant was so quiet that it was killing us, and one restaurant was so busy it was killing us. Rumi reopened after the restrictions with an incredible bang, and it was busier than it still is busier than it ever has been, which is partly so. This was part of the decision process, was that I can't keep sacrificing my attention to Rumi for something that is hasn't been making any money or running properly for years. So that was part of the reason why I had to make that decision. And even though we were able to get through to Christmas with a really busy period at Rumi, that those inner workings, that feeling of sort of being wiped out was definitely still there.
I don't get it. Like, what was it about Saracen that didn't hit? Because I loved it so much. Like, you had Tom Serafian, one of the most talented chefs in the country, doing really beautiful, sensitive food there. It was just a cool place, and everyone that I know loved it. So to me and my friends just like the wrong places. I mean, what's the story?
Look, I think that's part of that stress that I'm talking about, spending, 3 years it was in the end, trying to work out what to do better. What do we have to do to get the runs on the board, so to speak? What has to change? And working towards that. And then I suppose at a point where we thought maybe things were rolling, to be shut down that way, I think it just it took too much out of me. And there's definitely a feeling that I'm glad I don't have to think of ways to make it work anymore, because especially when, as you've expressed, and we're in no way claiming that it was, a flawless restaurant, but, what do you change? What was wrong? It was very hard to keep finding things that were wrong when it didn't feel that there was necessarily, you could improve, you can always improve. Whether it's about what was wrong is a different story.
Yeah, so interesting and pretty heartbreaking. When was it actually that it closed?
It closed the end of January this year.
Okay. So, because I was there, I think, the second last night, and I reckon I'm always going to remember it because it was one of those out of lockdown, things are starting to feel normal. It was just overexciting to do anything and go anywhere. And I went, even though my job is to eat at restaurants, I'm actually a bit disorganized about it. So I hadn't booked and just went on spec, and there was obviously nowhere to sit. But Tom just put a few dishes over the pass for my husband and me. And it was so exciting and fun. The food was so delicious. And it was a full restaurant. And it's just like, why? It
was one of those crazy things that it's like as soon as you announce that you're closing, everyone wants to come and eat. So, that was I hadn't been able to make it here for any services, basically, because as you have sort of well documented, there aren't many staff around, and so I was back in the kitchen full time at Rumi, and there was just no getting off early from there because it was so busy. And so I actually, the first time I came back to Saracen was the end of the closing night after I got out of service at Rumi.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just, really crazy in itself. That must, because, I mean, for a while you hadn't been hands-on in the kitchens at your restaurants. I mean, what did that feel like for, a staffing shortage to get you back there? And I mean, was it also like so many hospo families? It's like the kids are shelling peas and one's at the sink. Like, has it been like that for you guys?
Yeah, it has. So Nat's back in the kitchen. She's she's back in there doing the prep every day, and so she goes in the morning, and I go in the afternoon, and my 75-year-old dad goes in and cleans all the whiskers off the school prawns, and Malachi, the oldest son, gets in and he sort of helps out on the fryer or the dishes wherever he can go, and never forgets to sign off because he definitely wants that little pay packet that he gets. And he always leaves in the thick of things and says, "Dad, have you got a pen?" I'm like, "What for?" "Oh, got to sign off." So that's been really great to have that and sort of go back to basics in a way, and it's been a really good it's been quite is the word cathartic, I think, to be back in the Rumi kitchen where it all began, and build a new team and have the family back involved, and that's been really good. And like you sort of pointed out, it's a bit of a common story, but we lost so much during the lockdown that we just needed to get back in, and we still need to be there and make sure that we protect something that's been pretty important to our lives and our family. And I think what's been quite flattering is to the neighbourhood. It's easy to forget that you hold such a place in a neighbourhood like East Brunswick, because you get caught up in running the business and keeping things going. And I remember when we emerged from the long lockdown, which I think was the second one, and I saw the amount of bookings come in, I just burst into tears, because it was just so moving to think that, oh my God, we've just opened and that's it. The bookings have just come flooded in. And yeah, absolutely. That's the, so no, having that experience is definitely something that has helped settle myself anyway over the last few months.
I mean, it's really interesting looking back on your last 15 years, because I mean, you opened the first restaurant, but then over time you opened a couple of pizza places. You even had a place on my side of town, which I know was a bit of a nightmare for you. And you went into beer, like you had a share in a brewery, and then you had the city restaurant, and you're a bit more of a restaurateur, hey, like a bit more entrepreneur, and always had different things on the go. And here you are again with your dad, like taking the whiskers off the prawns in the one restaurant. I mean, what do you reckon?
There's lots that I reckon. I think I'm glad that I had the opportunity to give those things a go. I think things have changed quite a bit, and opportunities are a little bit harder now. I think the barrier to entry, I think, is a little bit firmer to getting into, whether it be, beer or even to restaurants. I think there's a competition level and a standard that is so high now that to start as a little guy and try and do those things is pretty hard. So I feel pretty fortunate to have been able to give those things a go. Some things have worked, some things haven't worked. When they don't work, the impact is pretty big, and especially in a restaurant, you can lose money so fast that it's pretty frightening. I don't think I need to sort of mention any numbers in particular, but opening up Moorshead over in Elstonwick was a big sort of wrong turn, I suppose, for us. And yeah, so fortunate to have been able to try those things, because a lot of people don't even have the chance to try those things. But also having a bit of a reckoning that I don't think that I had the infrastructure to be able to do those things effectively either. So, and I think there's a few people that opened restaurants around the time that Rumi opened that have maybe tried similar things, and I don't think there's too many of us that have done it that successfully. I think there's a level of professionalism and infrastructure that you have to have in place to enable those things to happen successfully.
And I mean, you're probably still feeling a bit burnt and tender by everything that's happened, but do you feel like you're going to be a one restaurant guy from now on, or are there sort of other plans bubbling away?
There's always a motivation, ideas, various things that pop up. I suppose I'd be moving a lot more carefully compared to what I may have done in the past. I was prepared to sort of just give anything a go and really just not just try my luck, but really put the effort and put the energy into it, and also run the risk. And I think as you get a bit older and as your kids grow up, you sort of maybe, for me anyway, that risk factor is a little bit less attractive. To do things where you would be set back, almost to square one, would be, I think, too big a risk for me to handle now. So I would be treading very carefully. The one project that has been weighing on my mind for a long time is that Rumi's lease is pretty much up, and they're going to develop the site. So Rumi has to move or not, and that's probably the thought that is in my mind most days, and always on the lookout for the alternative site, or and then there's the very real decision to make, which is would it be time to retire the restaurant and I don't know, have a break. It's pretty intense running a restaurant.
What would you do though?
That's the part of that's the part of the thought process that then brings you back to, I better find another site.
Well, I'm guessing it's not going to be in the city, and it's definitely not going to be in Elstonwick. So you're going to have to keep looking around Brunswick. Well, I think if Brunswick East thinks that there's a chance they're not going to have Rumi, then I reckon they'll find a site for you.
Yeah, right. Maybe someone listening might have a new building going up that wants a restaurant in there.
Yeah, well, it would be. There's a lot of restaurants. There's always, whenever there's a development, there's always a restaurant, and they're not always fantastic. So
they're always selling it as that's the cure-all, isn't it? Put a restaurant in the bottom, and everything else will be fine.
Joseph, obviously nobody knows how to do a pandemic, but you said that you weren't quite the leader that you wanted to be. What kinds of, how do you sort of reflect on that? Are there things that you, is there a different energy you wish you'd brought to it, or other strategies? I mean, how do you reflect on that?
I don't really know how to answer that. I don't know. I think leadership is, I think that's why there's so many, books about it and articles about it. I think it's very hard to articulate, and I just know that, I wasn't at my best during that period, and listening to some other guests that you've had on your show, that, some people just handled it better. Were more proactive, I suppose, is probably the first thing that comes to mind. I didn't feel very proactive during that period.
I mean, it's it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, there's so much pressure on a business owner because it's such uncharted waters and nobody really knows, you know, what's about to happen. And I suppose, yeah, a lot of people did, you know, did things. But I guess closing a business is an action as well. I mean, it's
absolutely, yeah.
And given that you went in with that business that was a bit behind the eight ball anyway, I guess, you know, it's such a tough decision to make that call. But yeah, I mean, it's a brave decision too. As you say, like, you wouldn't want to have it right now, hey?
No, it would. And I suppose coming back to what I said about not having the infrastructure in place, I think that's, so I was so stretched that, you know, it was, you know, the rubber band broke when the lockdown happened the first time round. And I think, to be running multiple sites or multiple businesses, you need certain infrastructure in place that enables you to, you know, not be running around picking up takeaway containers or, you know, that sort of stuff. Because when you're doing all of that as well as making the decisions, something's got to give.
I mean, you've had such great people cook in your businesses. Tell us a bit about your approach to, I guess, nurturing talent and training people and, you know, how you decide how much room to give people. I'm thinking of people like Jenna Abratzese and Tom Serafian, two incredible chefs that have come through your restaurants in particular. But, yeah, of course, there are many others.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Rumi's sort of dotted with, you know, bits of chefs that have come and gone. And, you know, one of the guys said to me the other day that they're just so grateful for having the room to grow. And that's been something that I've really enjoyed over the years. I think it's a real win-win scenario where the chefs get that autonomy and I get that little bit of headspace and a little bit of freedom to not have to make every decision. And so, you know, I find that, you know, if you have the right people in place, then you can trust those things. And you know, when someone first starts, you sort of push things a little bit, and you poke and you prod and you see what the response is, and when you're happy with the response, then you know, I've felt that, all right, well, if that's the response to these certain questions, or you can even call them tests, you know, what they must be thinking the right way. And, you know, Jenna, for example, I remember the time where once she sort of made the connection between the way her grandmother cooked, some of the techniques that her grandmother used, and some of the things that we were trying to do at Rumi, once she connected to that, I knew that was a real sort of a hurdle that we had to get over. And once she saw that, you know, I could trust her with running the kitchen, in, you know, making those decisions in the kitchen. And I say trust, not, you know, it's probably maybe even a little bit condescending, because it's not that they would not do the right thing, but it's more about working to what you need it to be. And I suppose when you have a place, when you're the owner of a restaurant, you always need to keep a sort of an overarching vision that you're happy to have, or that you're happy to guide people through. And so that's, I think that accepting, and it didn't take me much to accept that people in your kitchen are quite possibly, or most likely, as good or better than you are, because you have so much other stuff to think about or various other reasons, then they're probably in a better position to make those calls than you are yourself. And I remember saying to people that, you know, the food at Rumi got better the day I stopped cooking, and they thought that was a bit strange. But, when you're cooking and your head's in the food, so to speak, you don't have time to assess what else is going on. But when you sort of remove yourself from there and be able to watch what's going on and give feedback to the guys that are looking after the kitchen, that's where I think we really had that opportunity to sort of keep on developing the food or keep on developing the restaurant.
I mean, it's so interesting because now, of course, you are in the kitchen, but I can only imagine that with just the one kitchen to focus on, that you must be, and it must be amazing to be able to bury yourself in that a bit. And I really have a strong suspicion that there is a lot of heart and soul in the food right now.
Yeah, look, and I think that's what I do best. I've learned about myself, and I think to use your word, entrepreneurs maybe need to have more than just heart and soul that they plough into things. So that's coming back to that infrastructure and that know-how, rather than just being able to work your gut out and really make that impression on things yourself. I think there needs to be a broader understanding of the way the business is run, but I'm definitely enjoying, like you said, putting the heart and soul into as much as we can, and I think the restaurant is benefiting from it, and it feels pretty good to be able to, to be back there where it all began.
That's so great. So, Joseph, as I slowly let you get up from the couch, is there anything else that you'd like to say?
No, I don't think so. I think you do a very good job of covering it, and I want to thank you for inviting me on. I know we tried to make it happen a little while ago, but I don't think I was in the right mood to talk much about it. And you've been great, for the whole industry, and it's no surprise that you're the one that's come through with the help and the voice for our industry. So thanks to you, Dani.
Thank you. We can cut that out, but I appreciate it. Well, happy 15th birthday to you and to Nat and to the boys and to the whole family and all the crew there. It's just such an important restaurant for Melbourne. I cannot wait to come back. I can feel the texture of the meatballs as I think about them, and that kick in the labneh, just absolutely beautiful. And look, thank you also for Bar Saracen, which, it'll always have its perfect little jewel box shape and memories in my mind. I'm just glad it existed, even though it couldn't persist.
Sometimes those short and sharp flames are, they're good in their own right.
Totally. They really can burn so bright. All right. Well, so lovely to talk to you. And, we'll definitely chat when Carlton has a win.
Yeah, hopefully before then. Could be waiting a while. It's good that we had a bye this week, so it's a week we don't have to worry about the stress of them losing again.
I know, it was so relaxing. Okay, take care.
Thanks, Dani.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This